Hello, my name is Dalia Macias Martinez, and this is my video book report for my Ecology and Conservation Biology class, Spring 2021, with Dr. Robert Lovely. The book that I chose to read for this video was How to Clone a Mammoth, The Science of De-Extinction by Beth Shapiro, who is a biologist of ancient DNA at the University of California, Santa Cruz. This book was published in 2015 by the Princeton University Press, and then reprinted in 2020 with a preface mentioning the scientific strides since the last print. So this book is basically close to a how-to guide on how to clone an extinct species, particularly the mammoth, as the title goes, but also talking about passenger pigeons and moas and dodos and Yangtze River dolphins and stellar sea cows and bucardos. And this book basically tackles the questions and science of producing an exact clone from extinct species DNA. And Rideout Shapiro tells her readers that this is impossible to create an exact clone of a mammoth. And the book delves into difficulties of extracting DNA, ancient DNA. Having to travel to the Arctic region, having to find and then excavate and then preserve the carcass, and then the need to keep it frozen the whole entire time, and then to prevent degradation, and then trying to reduce as much contamination of the sample. And then once you finally get the sample to the lab and extract the DNA, having to just jigsaw that degraded DNA back together because it's just been, as she claims, just over-sheared. So all of these factors make it very challenging to produce DNA sequences that can just be like cut and pasted to create a whole genome. So on top of that, she writes about the need for a living cell to create an exact clone. And like the extinct bucardo, which the cells were collected before its death and then frozen, and then using the somatic cell nuclear transfer method that was used for the sheep dolly back in 1996, and using that method to create the bucardo to de-extinct it. But unfortunately, it died just like 10 minutes after it was born. So because of this, she rules out the somatic cell nuclear transfer method and also the Jurassic Park method, which of course, if we're going to be talking about de-extinction, we got to be talking about Jurassic Park, which is where the DNA is in amber and it's extracted. And then once the genome, as much of the genome is put together, any holes in it are filled using like frog DNA. But that is that's not a possible way of creating a clone, especially not for mammoths. So because the exact cloning of an extinct species is impossible without a live cell, which we probably won't ever get finding them in the tundra, the mammoths, she does offer alternative methods to clone a mammoth. So this is the option. There's the option to use the closest living relative of the mammoth, which is the Asian elephant, and using the elephant's genome to be the basis of the organism, and then cut and pasting mammoth genes into the elephant genome, and then basically creating a mammoth-like elephant, a mammoth-like creature. She also talks about domestication, basically how we did with dogs, and just or like backbreeding as well, like using the ancestor or using the relatives of today to like backpedal many millions of years to get back to the mammoth, which is a very slow way of getting to the mammoth, but it is possible. At least to get the phenotype of the animal. So she ends her book stating that there is still a long way to reach the point of a whole mammoth, but in the journey, other aspects are being discovered that may help in conserving endangered animals for today, which is pretty cool. So she had a few objectives with her book, and I think she was pretty successful in doing them. She had to tackle all of the questions that arise from having to clone a mammoth, and I think she did a really good job in answering the questions for the general population who may not be very versed in the science behind that. She also explains the question about the ecological consequences of creating a mammoth, and I think she does a really good job in explaining how, yes, there are consequences, and yes, there is going to be ecological change if we introduce this herbivore back into the wild. But I think she does a really good job in defending the mammoth if it ever is reintroduced into the tundra. So I think that her success and her objectives are pretty good. So I think there are things that worked and didn't work for this book. She did a great job at making this book pleasurable to read. She integrated a lot of her own work that made the book more approachable. She talked about traveling to the tundra and smashing a ball of amber full of bees, and then trying to find DNA, and all that created an image, and trying to do this. And it was cool. It was fun to read how this cool science lady kicks butt in her field. I think the hardest part, and what I don't think really worked for me, was the organization of all of the information. A lot of it was very repetitive. And then also back and forth, which was really hard to create a summary for the book because it just would go back and forth, and you can't really do that for a summary. She had a lot of themes in this book. Some of them being which species to choose if we were going to bring one back from the dead. Talking about ecotourism and which ones are better for the environment, and which ones will be able to what's the word for it? Basically, restoring ecosystem function. So she talked about that. She also talked about the technologies for de-extinction. And in the 2020 print, she talks about artificial wombs, which I thought was really interesting, especially when it comes to the case of trying to bring back the Steller sea cow, which the dugong is the closest relative of the sea cow. And the adult of a dugong is the same size as a Steller sea cow calf. So trying to make that dugong a surrogate mother is not a good idea. So she talks about how there are possibilities of creating surrogate mothers, creating artificial wombs instead of surrogate mothers. She talks about what can be achieved and obstacles, and sometimes, and she also tackles the benefits of de-extinction and just how it's not all bad. A lot of the benefits are just using the technology of de-extinction for present day conservation. So this book was definitely for the masses. It's like a pop ecology book, and it's really easy to read. And a lot of the information needed to understand the processes are already described in it. So you don't have to go into the book knowing everything. Or needing to know everything. It's definitely not for her peers in the expert level. I think from what I read from our conservation biology book, I originally believed that de-extinction was a totally bad idea. That the idea that these once extinct species would come into this world without a correct habitat or social group and then suffer in captivity. And that being said, the fact that a lot of the technology used for de-extinction, it can be used to alter genomes currently in endangered species and then help them adapt to the current climate easier and faster. So I think that technology is really, it should be thought about more. So at the end, Totally would recommend this book. It's really great. It's times joyful and funny and optimistic. Really great read. Great book. Thank you.